could buy a piece of history. Literally. A human skull from the 19th century delivered right to your door. For a hidden community of online collectors, this is a macabre version of Amazon. But when does collecting cross the line into desecration? For one man, that line was allegedly not just blurred, it was smashed with a crowbar in the dead of night. In early 2025, authorities in Pennsylvania uncovered what the district attorney would call a horror movie come to life. This is a story of how historic cemeteries were allegedly plundered for profit and how one man's gruesome business of selling stolen remains through online platforms was exposed. It felt like a violation in a place built for eternal rest. Mount Moriah Cemetery, a vast and historical burial ground sprawling across southwest Philadelphia and Yeadon, Pennsylvania, is the final resting place for over 150,000 souls, including veterans of America's earliest wars. But in late 2024, staff and volunteers began noticing something deeply disturbing. Ancient mausoleums, which were meant to be like stone safes for the dead, were being broken into. Over several weeks, the damage spread like a disease. Multiple grave sites were found forced open. The methods were crude but effective. It was like a brute force attack on a password, but with a crowbars against stone. Prior marks scarred the heavy slabs. In some cases, the thief had broken into the underground vaults to get to the casket within. It was a systematic violation, a pattern of desecration that left everyone with a chilling question. Who was doing this and why? The peace of the dead had been shattered. Their remains stolen from their coffins, and no one knew where they had gone. The investigation didn't start at Mount Moriah, but with a tip about another crime entirely. On December 23rd of 2024, detectives received a shocking tip about a mausoleum robbery in Luzerne County and a decomposing corpse hanging in the basement of a man named Jonathan Gerlich. The information was like a sudden flare in the dark, illuminating a single name and putting the 34-year-old squarely on their radar. As police dug deeper, they began tracking Jonathan's movements. Using license plate readers, they discovered his Toyota RAV4 had been in the vicinity of Mount Moriah Cemetery repeatedly. His cell phone records allegedly told the same story, acting like a GPS, pin dropped right at the scene of the crime. These digital breadcrumbs were forming a clear path, leading them directly to their primary suspect and connecting him to the desecrations of Mount Moriah. To figure out the motive, investigators had to enter a bizarre and controversial online world, a thriving and at times legal market for human remains that operates like a dark flea market for the deceased. On platforms like Facebook, private groups exist where members buy, sell, and trade human bones. Sellers often claim their wares are ethically sourced, but this case would highlight the dark underside of that trade. Investigators allegedly found that Jonathan Gerlich was active in these circles. His Cash App profile picture reportedly featured someone holding a human skull. In one Facebook group, another user apparently thanked him for a human skin bag. The digital trail suggests a clear motive. Jonathan wasn't just collecting, he was allegedly running a goulash storefront, slinging skulls for profit. This wasn't about historical preservation, it was a business. With the evidence piling up like bricks on a wall, law enforcement decided to set a trap. On the night of January 6, 2025, detectives set up a stakeout at Mount Moriah Cemetery. They watched as Jonathan's vehicle entered the property. A detective then allegedly caught Jonathan in the act of stealing remains. As officers moved in and took him into custody, they found he was carrying a bag containing tools and human remains, including those of children. Confronted at the scene, Jonathan allegedly admitted to the thefts, telling police that he had sold some of the remains online and that the vast majority were in his basement. The ghost that had been haunting the graveyard had been called. Following the arrest, investigators executed search warrants on Johnson's home in Ephrata and a nearby storage unit. What they found inside was beyond comprehension. Delaware County District Attorney Tanner Rouse described the scene by saying detectives walked into a horror movie come to life. The basement of the quiet suburban home had been turned into a grotesque library of the dead. Lined up on the shelves were over 100 human skulls, arranged like some collector's morbid trophies. Skulls, long bones, mummified hands, and mummified feet were scattered throughout the space. Authorities also found two decomposing human torsos and remains of infants. The horror didn't end there. In a nearby storage locker, investigators discovered 8 additional human corpses, ashes, and older jewelry believed to have been taken from the graves. The scale of the alleged crime is staggering. Johnson was jailed on a $1 million bond, facing over 500 separate charges, including more than 100 counts of abuse of a corpse, burglary, and theft. Yeadon Police Chief Henry, a 30-year veteran of law enforcement, called it one of the most disturbing cases of his career. For the families whose loved ones buried at Mount Moriah, it has created a nightmare of uncertainty. This case shows how the sanctity of our final resting places can collide with modern online marketplaces. The work of identifying the dozens, possibly hundreds of individuals whose graves were violated will be like trying to reassemble a shattered stained glass window piece by piece. For the community and the families affected, the wounds are deep. As police chief stated, rest in peace means rest in peace. Unfortunately, these people aren't resting in peace anymore, and we are trying to piece and put this back together as best as we can. It's a chilling reminder that even the dead aren't always safe from being turned into a product.